Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to be on here, whether it's afternoon or evening, good evening or good afternoon. So today I'll just kind of be going over the general application components involved in applying for college so that you have an idea of what to expect as you head into that in your senior year of high school. Wherever you might be right now, I think it's like a good thing to keep in mind. So, slide, please change. Oh, yeah, so just a little bit, okay, a little bit about me before we move forward. I'm actually going to be a freshman in college this year, so I just went through the application process, and I'll be studying computer science and business, but across majors, like the general application that you write is going to be pretty similar. So let's get started. So the first thing to know, basically, when you're thinking about applying is that there are a few different types of applications that you can fill out to different colleges. And the three main things that you need to know are the common application, the coalition application, and then the UC system, which has their own application. Now, these websites are like big groups of colleges. They sign up to be a part of these websites so that you can fill out one general application, and then your information gets sent to all of these different people so that you don't have to fill out a separate form for every single college, and it makes the process much easier if you apply to colleges using the common application and coalition application as much as possible. What basically happens is you fill in all of your basic information, like your name, your contact information, your background for what you did in school, your information about your parents, and so on and so forth. And then after that, both of these applications have an essay that you're required to write. And so this essay allows colleges to understand more about who you are as a person, because the rest of the application is just really focused on your background and like a lot of just numbers and general information, but they don't get to know you until that point. So that's also a huge component we'll be talking about later. Other things that
Sorry about the technical difficulties. It should unfreeze soon. Surbhi, I think you're on mute again.
Hi, sorry, I lost connection to Wi-Fi. Let me just share my screen again.
Yeah, I'll have to transfer host to you real quick again, I think. One moment.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine. Wi-Fi is super weird for everyone.
Yeah.
You should be able to share your screen right now.
Great. And present. Yeah, so as I was saying, the last component that you really need to be thinking about is financial aid and how that's going to work for you. So the FAFSA is something that you should definitely fill out because it is free. It'll probably open up around the 1st of October. And so the earlier you do it, the higher chance you have at getting more aid from that. So definitely fill that out. And then there's also the CSS profile, which College Board has. And I'm not sure what the exact fee is. I think it's about $12 per college you send to. So you also do want to think about the cost of applying to colleges because it does add up with application fees per college, and then also if you're filling out the CSS profile. So now there's 4 different application seasons basically that you want to be thinking about. And so what you'll be doing for most of your applications is probably regular decision. And that'll be any time from like September to January that most colleges will have it open. But if they have earlier rounds, then the regular round is usually during December and January when you're applying. And so that is perfectly fine if you just want to apply to everything then, but the later you apply to college, the later you also get your decisions because these decisions come in March. And then commitment day for choosing your college is on May 1st. So if you want to have an earlier decision from your colleges, there are 3 other wonderful options, as you hopefully can see on my screen. So there's the early decision process, where if you choose to do this, you can only do it with one college, and it happens very early in the school year, like between October and November typically. And so if you're applying, you have to sign a contract that says, if I get into this college, then I will attend. So when you're thinking about whether or not you want to do ED to a college, you need to know that that is the school you want to go to, and it definitely has to be your first choice. And then the other thing is, if you get in, then you don't know what your financial package will look like. So you also need to think about the affordability of this school. ED is a great choice for boosting your ability to get into a college because it shows that you're willing to commit to them completely. So you should do it if it looks like it's your first choice and it's working out financially, but if not, then you might not want to do this option. There are 2 other options that are early. So I'm going to talk about restrictive early action and then early action. Restrictive early action basically is right around the same time in the fall. And it's not a very common option, so you might not have heard of it, but there are some schools that only allow you to apply early to them and not to any other place. So like you can't do early decision or early action. You can only apply to that school as like an early school. This is similar to ED because it shows that you have a high degree of interest in the school. And it's definitely worth considering if you are applying to a very competitive school like Stanford and Harvard. Those are the main examples that I kind of think about when I hear REA. There are others out there that I didn't list on here. Those are just 2 examples. And then early action, this is personally what I tried to do for my college process in as many colleges that offered it. If you plan out your college application timeline correctly and you start thinking about it in the summer after your junior year, then you're probably going to have an idea of what colleges you want to apply to. And I definitely recommend applying EA to any colleges that offer it because it's not restrictive. You can apply to as many colleges as you want early action, unless of course you did a restrictive early action. And it's also going to give you that fast response about whether or not you got in around December. So it gives you more time to think about all of your options, and it may or may not give you a very slight boost in even getting accepted. So now you're probably wondering what goes into these applications, and honestly, it's very, very similar across the board what you're going to be giving to colleges. On the left here, I have a list of everything that the common and coalition application are both going to ask you. So you're going to fill out your basic information as I discussed earlier, and then also all of the courses you took and the grades you got. So when you're signing up for your high school courses, make sure that you're signing up for those AP or IB classes whenever you can, especially for the subjects that you want to maybe pursue in college, because it'll make you look more competitive, because it shows that you're taking a risk or like challenging yourself in those areas. Another thing that they will ask you for is exam scores. Now, in this particular year, we're in 2020 right now, and obviously the COVID pandemic is going on, so a lot of schools are going test optional. So if you're looking to apply this fall, you probably don't need to worry about taking SAT or ACT tests, but in the following years, I'm guessing that a lot of schools will continue to require this. The English proficiency test is required only if you're an international student, otherwise that's not needed. And then SAT subject tests are going to be either recommended or required in a handful of schools, but if you choose not to take them, then you're still going to be fine. I personally didn't end up doing SAT subject tests, but I know that a lot of my friends did do them, and it didn't really serve as a disadvantage to me, so it's kind of up to you. And you also want to see on the website for all the schools you're interested in if they want you to take an SAT subject test, because if that is the case, then you'll want to try to take that as early as possible to make sure that you have time to do your retesting and carefully preparing all in time. And then the next thing is your extracurricular activities. These are just going to be everything that you did in high school. You're going to take a look at that and you're going to see which ones are most compelling, which ones impacted you the most and you feel like you had the most impact through. And then you'll have a very small space to provide more information about those. So on the coalition, you can choose 8, and then on the Common App, you can choose 10. I recommend not filling up all of those spaces if you feel like some of your activities that you did weren't quite as meaningful, because you really want to show the best side of yourself and you want to represent yourself as best as possible. Because in your college application, it really does come down to they're trying to get to know you as a person through this application, and there aren't a lot of opportunities. Yes, there's the essay, but other than that, this is your entire like history of what you've done outside of school and what you're passionate about. So again, just try to present yourself as authentically as possible and don't be afraid to brag about your accomplishments there. The awards section is pretty straightforward. You can include up to 5 of the ones that you feel like are they represent you best again. And then the general essay is a really, really big deal. You want to spend a lot of time on this, think about it, start early on this essay. Whether or not you start applying to colleges in the summer, I highly, highly recommend that you work on this essay. And then the last component is something that you're not necessarily going to get to see. These are your letters of recommendation, and most colleges are going to want letters of recommendation from you. So you need to ask both your counselor as well as some teachers for these, because this allows colleges to understand how others perceive you in an academic environment, both academically, although there's not a big focus on that in these letters, and then also just how you are in the classroom and in the community. So we'll talk about that as well in a little bit more detail, but basically letters can make or break your application. So you want to think about those really carefully, even though you're not really the one who's writing that content. And then specific colleges are also obviously going to ask you additional questions. So you want to kind of think about this in advance, because if you don't, then you might get swamped with application work to do later on. You want to create a resume, whether or not colleges actually end up asking for it, just because it's really useful in college and you're going to be needing it for other things anyways. You also want to be thinking about these major topics that I've listed, and you can go back to this list later on because it covers a lot of the questions that I've seen. Your supplemental essays are usually going to be like 200 to 400 words depending on the college. I don't really know what more to say about these. You just want to, once again, take every opportunity you have to present yourself authentically as best as possible. And then the last thing is I want to highlight that you might have the chance to provide a portfolio. So if you're an artistic person, this can be really, really helpful in presenting that to your college admissions counselors. And I definitely recommend taking advantage of that. And in the early fall of your senior year, you want to start getting these together in your area, whether that's like painting, dancing, music, drawing, whatever it may be. Most colleges are going to accept that, and it'll be a valuable addition to your overall application. Oh, actually, sorry, the final thing is the application fee. I touched on this earlier, but you want to make sure that you're planning for this because a lot of people these days are applying to a lot of colleges, and most colleges charge a fee for you to even apply to them. And it can get expensive. Like a lot of people spend upward of $1,000 sometimes. So you want to be mindful about how much is going into each application and just kind of think about that carefully ahead of time too. Okay, so more about letters of recommendation. There is this form called the FERPA I want you to be aware about, and it waives your right to see your letters of recommendation. Your high school counselors will probably tell you more about it, but it's really good for you to sign this form so that colleges know that the contents of the letters that people are writing to you are actually their own feelings, and you're not really manipulating what they're writing by being able to see it, because obviously if someone else is writing about you and you see it, then they'll phrase it differently. So you don't have to sign the FERPA form, but it's definitely recommended that you do. And my school, at least, my high school required us to do it, so yours might do that as well. You'll just have to check in with your high school to see what it's like for you. And another important point is you want to ask for these letters of recommendation very early on, because oftentimes teachers will have a cap on the number of people that they are willing to write recommendations for. So you want to be thinking about who you want as early as the start of junior year. And you don't necessarily have to like try to act differently in their class or anything. Like, you should be participating and trying your hardest in all of your classes. But if you do have people in mind, then that can be helpful for, you know, having a plan of who to ask. And so that way you can make sure that you develop a really good relationship with that teacher and they know you as well as possible when you do get around to asking them. It'll help, first of all, with getting that person to actually write a letter for you, because some people refuse if they think they don't know you well enough. And then additionally, your letter, it could either be really plain and it could say that, I don't know, Surbhi is a really good student in my class. She does all of her work on time. Like, it could be generic like that. Or maybe if I took the time to know that teacher better, they would cite better examples about me, and that would really shine through in the letter. And you also are going to need a counselor letter, most likely, for the colleges you apply to. So your counselor is probably going to end up pulling opinions from additional teachers that didn't write your main two letters. And it's really important that, one, you keep a good relationship with your counselor as well, in case they are able to speak from direct experience with you. But if you come from a big high school like me, that's pretty unlikely that they got to know you that well. So, you know, also be aware that you might have 2 to 4 teachers sending them additional information about how you were in their class. And finally, before we move on from letters of rec, I just wanted to say sometimes colleges require, or they don't require, they accept an additional letter from someone who knows you really well that might add value to your application. And you don't want to force another letter of recommendation if you don't have someone that can really add value and show who you are from a new perspective. But if you do know someone who can speak to your great work ethic, to how great of a person you are, to your creative skills and whatnot, you might have like a work supervisor or someone who taught an artistic class for you, or like say you did dancing for a lot of years and you want to use your dancing instructor. So just situationally think about whether or not there is another adult in your life who can help with that additional letter of recommendation. This is a different component of your application. This is when you're thinking about if you want to apply to an honors college or not. I've had this question come up a lot of times when I'm talking to juniors. And really, I think what you want to do is consider the specific honors program per university, because a lot of times they'll ask you, do you want to do it? And it's perfectly fine to say no if you feel like that university's program doesn't give you what you want to offer or what you want them to offer to you. Sometimes when you go to university, it's really helpful to be in honors because you get access to really great research opportunities, and like you get some awesome housing. You get to be in a really academically oriented place with other people who want to succeed in college, but most people going to college also kind of have that in mind. So when you're looking at honors, it's not necessarily a deal breaker if you don't go for that option. It can be really useful in getting to take liberal arts classes that further your understanding of things that you might be interested in. It might give you opportunities that give you an edge over other students to, like get ahead in research, as I said. So just really look at your honors college and see what it has to offer before you make this decision, because it's going to impact your experience for sure. Oh, and lastly, you can reject the honors program after you've been admitted if you so choose later on. So if you're totally not sure about honors, just apply. Yeah, so that was basically like my overview of what happens in the college application process. As a final tip, I would encourage everyone to start thinking about it as early as possible, but not to get stressed about it, because while senior year can be busy thinking about all these details, you do have a lot of time, so you don't want to get too stressed. And there's also a link to this presentation here. Let me see if there's questions. I can take those at this point.
Right. So a lot of the questions are in the chat. I don't know if you can see them.
I can see them.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So hi all, this is a question that came up.
Oh, that was my clarification about what counselor meant. So it's not like the mental health counselor, it's your college counselor. Just wanted to put that out there.
Oh yeah, thanks. So what if you don't know what you want to major in? Lots of people say that you should choose your college based on fit. How do you know what college is a good fit? And it's hard to tell from a tour and the school website. Yeah, I definitely agree. That is something I struggled with while I was researching colleges. If you're confused about what to major in at the moment, then you should first see if you want to go in undeclared, or if you have a couple of specific interests that you want to start out with. Like, for example, if you know that you're broadly interested in like engineering possibly, but you don't know what you want to do further, then that kind of changes how you're looking at the programs. What I like to do is I like to think about what I'm looking for in a college, because I agree tours and school websites all look very pretty, but they don't give me that much information. So one of the things that came to mind for me is I really want to be in an urban setting where I have lots of access to great internship opportunities, to networking, and just to that sort of an environment. So I mostly applied to urban institutions or like places that allowed me to have that environment. And then another factor can be cost, because you always want to be thinking about that and what your personal situation looks like. I'm trying to think. Other things, yeah, if you have at least some sort of an idea, then okay, cool, unlimited minutes. Yeah, if you have some sort of an idea, then you'll want to look for colleges where you know that the programs are good in each of the things you're interested in. So for me, I was actually a little bit confused about computer science and business at the start. So I looked for programs that either allowed me to do both very easily, which luckily I ended up in, as well as places that had both good computer science schools and business schools. Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is just go off of the details that you do know. And if nothing else, look for a place that has a really good program for undeclared people. One of the things I noticed about my school is that they have a really good program for undeclared majors because they allow you to explore all of the different fields. So it's important to look for colleges like that can help you figure out your interests and then get sorted into what you really want to do. You see that I applied as a business and CS major. You're interested in business and finance, so extracurriculars that I recommend. So I personally in high school was involved in DECA for business. Like that was a really big part of what I did there. It was a lot of fun and it helped me understand that business was something that I wanted to continue to pursue and was passionate about. So I definitely recommend clubs like DECA and FBLE that allow you to do that. And then you can also try to get involved in business directly by doing just starting your own micro business or even starting a nonprofit organization in an area you're passionate about, because you're going to end up taking control of all of these different business functions. You're going to understand how applying all of these concepts that you've been learning about online and in school actually work in the real world. And I've actually done that throughout my high school, and I learned a lot of things. And then finally, I recommend trying to get an internship in your senior year or maybe even junior year of high school when you're kind of old enough. You're 16, 17 years old at that point. And what you want to do for that is just cold call businesses that are lower profile and more likely to admit you in. So think startups or maybe even colleges for certain things. And then that can help you build both your extracurricular resume and help you to better define your interests between both business and finance. What are honors for college? So the honors program or the honors college at most schools is basically just a separate little program that allows you to interact with other people who are first of all in honors by having special programming for you. Like they'll bring in some speakers or they'll provide just extra resources. And then oftentimes you'll be required to take some honors classes. So they'll just be a little more advanced than your regular classes that you would otherwise take. You'll get a designation obviously on your diploma that you did do honors. And then the other day-to-day things are that you might end up living in an honors housing space. What's it called? An honors dorm. So if you want to be in just a community that's like slightly more academically oriented, then that might be helpful for you. I know that ASU, for example, is one school that has a really, really good honors college, and it gives you a lot of good advantages that you might be able to think about while you're applying if you choose to apply to ASU. And then other schools don't really offer as many benefits through honors. So just Google the specific honors school for the different colleges you're looking at, and then you can figure out whether or not the specific perks of that college interest you enough to apply. Do I have a specific method I use to brainstorm essays? So I like to think about like big events that kind of changed my outlook on life. Like, I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but like moments that you're doing something and you just have a sort of a realization about the world, or like you think about it in a slightly different way, that can help you as a starting point, and you can think about what specifically defines you as a person and what your journey was. It also depends on the application prompt. Sometimes it's just really best to start writing, and then you can write just a huge rant, and then your feelings will start to come out and it'll start to evolve towards something that you can more concretely wrap your head around, and you can be like, hey, this was a cool experience for me that I would want to reflect on. And you'll also end up probably writing a lot of different versions of your application essay. So it's totally fine if you write about different topics even, and then you can show someone who you trust with their writing skills and say, hey, these are all of my different essays, look at them, see which ones seem to pop the most, and then work on refining from there. So on to, do you have any recommendations for getting involved in research for high school students? So personally, I didn't do research, but I know that a lot of my friends definitely got into research in high school. I live near Seattle, so a lot of my friends went to the UW for research, both in senior year and in some cases even before that. And so that was a public school, so it was really easy to get involved in research there. I don't know how it is at private institutions, but with public schools, what my friends did is that they just figured out the departments that they were interested in researching in and what skills they wanted to get out of research. And then what you should do is you should write just an email to all of the professors that you're interested in working with. You need to cold call as much as possible because not everyone wants to work with high school kids. And you might need to send out dozens and dozens of emails because getting your foot in the door is like pretty hard. But once you have had one experience, it gets easier to get more. In your email, what you want to include is basic information about you, say who you are, why you're interested in the research topic of the professor, what skills you have that might fit in appropriately. And even if it's just like things that you kind of know, like some proficiency in a coding language, for example, that might come in handy, you still want to include that, and you want to present yourself in the best light. You can say, I don't have the most experience, but I'm really passionate, so I would love to work with you and learn more. And then the last thing you want to do is you want to include your resume in that email for sure. Just list whatever you've got. Obviously, as a high schooler, you're not going to have an extensive record of things. By research, do I mean science research or something else? So it's definitely way easier to get into research as a high schooler if you're in science. So I guess I've been mostly thinking about science research as I've been talking, but you can definitely also get in for other subjects. It'll just be more difficult because they usually take less undergrad even for other subjects depending on the school. But you should definitely try, because the more people you ask, the more likely it is that someone will either be willing to take you on or be willing to point you to someone else. Is it better to get an average grade in an AP class or a high grade in a normal class? I would say a high grade in a normal class. Like, I know that it's not always recommended that you don't do normal classes. People always push you towards taking all the AP classes. But if you don't think that the subject that you're thinking about in AP classes in is your best subject, then it's not really that smart to go there and deal with all this extra added stress and anxiety throughout the school year where you're thinking about getting an A in that one class constantly. It's not a deal breaker to not take all AP classes. You definitely want to be challenging yourself with a couple each year, but I would prioritize GPA because GPA means that you would get a higher scholarship because a lot of places have scholarship bands. And then it also means that you're, again, less stressed out, and mental health is also important. I'll pause if, okay. Another question. When should you start studying for the ACT/SAT? So I actually started out as an 8th grader. I wanted to get it out of the way as soon as possible. And then I know other people that started in junior year, actually. I recommend that you start as soon as you're comfortable with it because it is really just another requirement. And it's like a box that you have to check off, basically. If you feel like you haven't learned all of the math you need yet, then you want to wait a little bit, but understand that ACT and SAT, they're really just making sure that you have the basic skills you need to succeed in college. So you really only need to reach a certain benchmark level and then you're good to go. Sorry, just give me a second. I need to mute my phone. I'm so sorry. Shoot, okay.
We can't really hear stuff from your phone, so I don't think it's a super giant deal.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so on to ACT, SAT. Yeah, I would definitely start studying by junior year because you're going to be applying in senior year, so you want to have time to retake it, but just try to do it early. And I recommend if you do SAT, that you use Khan Academy or other resources like that because you will be able to identify what your weak points are earlier and really focus on that as you go.
Are there any more questions that aren't covered? If not, we can probably conclude. I'm looking through the chat right now. Did you cover the one with Common App and Coalition?
I don't think so.
I think Hannah asked, do you recommend the Common App or the Coalition? Is one better than the other?
Oh, okay, yeah. So neither of them is better than the other. They're both kind of the same deal to colleges. Personally, I preferred my Common App essay, so I ended up using the Common App wherever I could when the school was on both applications. But colleges do not care at all which one you submit, and really both of them ask you to fill out the same information. It's just that the Common App has an essay that allows you to write in 150 more words, and I happen to like my variation more, so that's why I chose Common App. Okay, if you guys have any other questions that come up later on, these are our contact information. You can email either the Chief Club Initiative or myself, and we'd be happy to answer any more specific questions that you guys have. Audrey, do you have any last words?
No, thank you to everyone for attending. We have more webinars coming up. They should be listed on our website unless they're over a month away, or I think unless they're scheduled for after July 10th or something, they should all be on our website. So feel free to check those out. Surbhi, this was a really amazing presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to educate all of us on how the college application process works and specifically the different topics you covered.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
no
you.
problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, guys.